All right, let's go ahead and keep going. You can see where we're at right now. And you can see this kind of strange smoothing that's going on here. And that's most likely because right now we have viewport levels enabled on here. So we could actually kill that and just go back to the base mesh. So there's the base mesh. Let's go into vertex selection mode. We've got that accidental extra vertex there. I'm going to say delete. We don't want to delete vertex, apparently. Let's just dissolve it. There we go. All right. So delete and dissolve, they behave differently. If you notice, when I deleted that edge, it just completely eliminated this polygon. And we could actually do that and then just re-bridge between the two. There's always a few different methodologies. Again, I surf the wave between what I'm used to in Maya and what goes on in this program. So let's go ahead now and look in top view. And now, when I was referencing this blueprint, it starts to make a whole lot more sense to me when I see this blueprint. Let's go back to object mode. When I see this and realize now that that was the error that I was seeing at the center line of the airplane. And now that I know that about that one view, it's going to make a whole lot more sense when we're modeling this. And you can see here too, we could probably get a little chubbier on the airplane. And these are all things that we can kind of mess with and fix as we go. And maybe we'll take care of some of that right now, why not? Let's select the airplane. We will go into, let's go tab to get into sub-object or into edit mode. We will grab that. We know we're on X-ray view right now because of the kind of gradient looking gradient edges that you're seeing here right now. And then we will go to scale, and we will scale these a bit wider, not to the width of the fillet, which is what we're seeing here, but more the width of the airplane if I was to continue that down. And remember to make that move a little bit more discrete. I'm going to hold down shift, then I'll go to the next set, and again we will mess with those. And we'll go to the next set, and we'll hold down shift. And again, if this wasn't your guys' first model project of this magnitude, I'd probably stop that. I'd probably be a little bit more careful about how well we're sculpting all this. But right now, I will just be happy if you're getting a usable complete model. To worry too much about sculpting is a little beyond your abilities right now. So let's get it to build, and then you can get as fancy as you want with it. I'm letting you off the hook that way. And remember, that's probably the most we do on the airplane is not this kind of little, not the big stuff. Doing the big stuff and getting the geometry here, that's like the easy part. Then the part that eats up a bunch of time is that bit of sculpting at the very end. It's the sculpting that really takes a fair amount of effort when we're working on this, not the other parts. Okay, I'm not going to mess too much with the front because I know the front should be an actual cylinder. So I don't want to start messing up the cylinder at the front and turning it into an oval. So we'll call it good for right now. And we're getting much more in the zone. And you can see again here too that for whatever reason, our views are not lined up great. As you can see here, the cowl is not lined up. I don't know how this image plane got shifted. And it's like, which one do we want to be wrong? Do we want the wings to be wrong, or do we want the cowl to be wrong? I think I'll make the wings wrong, because we know in side view that that we were lined up with the cut on the aileron. Let me verify that. Yes. Okay, so we're adjusting the top view a little bit. So we moved it to center it a little better, and then we moved it. And again, this is all good stuff for you guys to see me do on the fly, because that's how it is when you're modeling. There's nothing that's ever quite perfect, and you just have to kind of react. And so everything gets sort of fixed and moved and poked and prodded on the fly as you're doing stuff. So I'm going to alt select this to get the whole edge loop, And I'm going to move that back a little bit, Alt select to get the whole edge loop, and we'll bring that to the front like that. All right, and then we will go to vertice selection, which is 1 on the keyboard, and we'll pick box around the entire wing, and then we will shift pick box through the other wing, okay? And then we will move this more in line with what's going on our blueprint there. Okay. And again, we can slice and dice. The important part is that you're making a pretty effective bit of sculpture right now. Now here, let's look at something else as well. In the top view, all right, you can see the width of the cockpit. And this is another one of those areas where eventually it would help us to start using the knife tool. And then that way we can start introducing that area on the actual airplane. Why don't we go ahead and do that? Let's go to the knife tool, and we'll come in here. And we'll start moving this along the shape of the cockpit. I know this is slightly off, don't panic. And for right now, I'm just going to call that good. I'm going to hit enter, because remember, to get the other half of the airplane, in the end, we will wind up just, when it comes time, the other half of the airplane, we will just get by mirroring it over again. So let's go ahead now, and let's take the faces. Let's grab this face, this face, this face, this face, and that. I don't know if we need that one. Let's not take that one. We'll go into side view, and let's go ahead and extrude. Remember, hit E, click, and then let's move it up. All right. And here we go. We're starting to get some of the geometry that we're going to need here. And again, it's far from perfect, and we're going to eventually have to tweak all of this. Let's stop that. We're going to have to scale this in a bit, and the sculpting part of it we will deal with when the time comes. I'm not overly concerned about sculpting just yet. And then now you can see we could also extrude these two faces. Hit E, click, and then let's move it up. Let's go ahead and go back into side view, and we can decide, do we want to just make this polygon a little too big, or do we want to add one more above it? How about for this area, just to be a little bit more pinky out, we'll make slightly smaller ones. All right, and then we will extrude this one, and I'll show you guys one more thing that we can do. And again, E, click, and then let's bring it up. Let's look at how we're doing in side view. All right. There we go, bring it up to there. And then now let's go to vertices, and we will select that vertice, and we will start to rope this in a little bit, and we will do the same thing here. We'll start to bring that in. All right, and you can see that introduces this right here. So if we closed this off right now, it would give us a triangle. A triangle is not ideal for what we're trying to do right now. There's better ways that we can handle that. And there's a lot of ways, there's so many ways to skin a cat. And why don't we, why don't we talk about a few of them as we move on here? Let's go ahead and go to face select. Let's delete these two faces, okay? Then we'll go into edge. I'll just hit the keyboard number 2 this time. We'll select that edge, that edge. I'm sure you can see where we're going with this. I will bridge, and on this one, I will add one cut. So now we're getting one extra edge right in the center. I'll go back into side view, okay? And then I will go to vertice selection, number 1 on the keyboard, and I will sculpt that kind of into the area that we're trying to deal with on the airplane, and maybe distribute this one a little bit differently. Okay, and maybe I'll distribute this one a little differently too. All right, and then now what you can see is we've effectively created a 4-sided region that way. Let's hit 2 on the keyboard, and we'll select an edge, skip one, select one, and then we'll bridge. So there you go. So now we've bridged that shut, and right now that is one chunky top rudder. We are going to have to fix that, right? So we'll go into face, we'll select these faces on the end, and we will delete those. I'll hit delete on the keyboard one more time, delete faces. And then now, why don't we remember what this looked like, or at least hopefully you do, remember what this looked like in our photo reference. So for right now, I'm just going to go into vertice selection. I'll grab a few of these because I know that heads down pretty well there. So I'll go in and we will skinny this up. And you remember it was approximately maybe about 1.5 inches sized at the end. Maybe it could go a little further than that. All right, let's go with that for right now. I'll do the same thing here. And now the geometry's there. Now what we're really doing is we're just sculpting. So not so bad. And maybe we'll let that start display open, and we will look at the end on the photo reference and see if we're overdoing it, underdoing it, where we're at that way when the time comes. So for right now, I'm just going to make it a gradual transition, and we also need to adjust these verts here. And we'll look at the photo reference to decide how far to go with that when it comes down to it. But at the back here, let's go to the rear reference one more time. Where does it start to open up? It starts to open up somewhere in that zone of, I would say it's before we get to the height of the cockpit cut. It's already starting to open. So let's think about that as we're moving forward. So below the height of that, it begins to open, but I don't know that it's opening any significant amount. All right. And the thing that I've done, which I've been talking about here, is I've sort of messed up our mojo, and that I messed up this angle, and that's going to make the airplane a little strange there. So I'm going to match that angle that you see from the polygon in front of it. I'm going to continue to match that. And you can see that's a little too far, that's too close. So somewhere in the Goldilocks zone like that. Okay, and then we will probably have to keep adjusting and readjusting those as we move. Because right now, for example, we have this vertex, but we don't have it on the other side. So let's look at our photo reference one more time, and we'll get a sense for how this kind of opens. And we're at our top thickness by a little bit under the ailerons on the side. So let's go back to Blender. All right. And so there we have that, and we will keep gradually opening this. This one does have its sister on the other side, so we can scale that one. And then we've got these ones over here. And you can see again, realistically too, I think it's almost pointless to worry about the other side of the airplane right now, because we are not going to get there. Let's bring this over, and we know it was getting pretty thick back there. Some thickness. And it reached its max distance about there. And then these ones I will scale just to keep them symmetrical. And then at the bottom, let's look at what it was at the bottom. At the bottom, let's see if we can find a better view of the bottom. No, there's not much of that. Okay, so it's just kind of a rounded shape at the bottom. Okay. So right now, that should be okay for this moment. All right, and now we're getting into a better sculpt for that area of the airplane. And we're keeping the cylinder feel of it for the most part up until we get to that area. We are going to have to skinny this out. The airplane does not stay this chubby up until the rear, but that's a sculpting issue. We will eventually get into sculpting. Right now what we're doing is we are just getting the geometry that we're going to need to be able to model this airplane as we go. And then once the geometry is there, then we will start sculpting. Okay, I think that's probably enough for this video, and then we will move on in the next one to creating a new shape and then putting in the beginnings of the geometry for the rear ailerons, the rear wings. Okay, that'll do it for this one. And don't forget, Jesus saves. Okay.